One of my earliest memories was prison. So it was one of my earliest memories as a toddler. If anyone says that your dad and your family or being part of that world and being part of that thing doesn't affect you, they're talking bullshit, Chris. Of course it affects you. It forms you at a young age. These rules, like, it's not normal as a kid to be lied to so much. I mean, we're lied to as kids all the time, but this is extra. You're lied all the time. Father Christmas is real. So is his bleeding Easter bunny. I was led to believe my dad was building a wall. He was away for work. He forgot to build a bloody door, didn't he, for this wall he was building, but because he didn't get out. But that's what they tell me. Where's Dad doing it?
Who manufactured that particular whopper?
That was my mum and Dad between the two of them. It used to change once a week, Chris. Like, what does Dad do this week? Well, Dad's a jeweller this week. Now this week, Dad's a car salesman. Oh, hold on a minute now. It just changed every week. So really young, to explain what I'm seeing is that's what they told me. What's Dad doing here? He's building a wall, son. You see that big wall? All the barbed wire over the top of it there? That's what Dad's building. That's why he's got to stay here to work. Oh, okay. And, as a kid, you don't really ask questions, but you know something's a bit odd. Like, I hated going on the prison visits. I remember, where did we go? Dartmoor, was it? No.
You were Londoners, right? So
yeah.
And he was, like, all over the country in terms of, like...
He's been to near enough every nick. I think it was 26, 28 years in total.
Obviously, nightmare if he's a million miles away.
Oh, Chris, my mum could do it. Like, we'll have her on later in the show. You can ask her stories about the travelling and all that. It's been a nightmare. But I remember, in particular, one of the nicks he was in, I'll have to go back and ask my mum and all that where it was because I was so young. But I remember hated going on these visits. Now, there's a smell to prison, Chris. Like everyone knows the hospital smell. Some people like it, some people don't. But this is distinct as well. Prison is stale. Dirty, musky kind of smell. And I always used to... Now, I didn't really know my dad then. You imagine, he's away for a few years, very important parts of your life. I don't know who this man is. I'm a bit like that. Come cuddle me, son. Who are you? Sort of thing, And I hated going, and he smelled. I thought, I've got to go and see me dad. Mum says I've got to see Dad, and he stinks, this fella. So I used to think as a kid, it's mad the things you think of. And there was this play area, so what had happened, the kids would go off, and I'd go and play with the other gangsters' sons, and that were only that big. And they remember these, Dad had this play mat in there. Do you remember these? It looked like a town. You roll it out.
Flat.
Yeah, completely flat, but it looks like a town. As a kid, it was wonderful. It's like, wow, look at this. But you get a bit closer now. You see all the donations, the toys. You got like Chucky as a doll with one eye out. I remember this frog, Chris. Honestly, I hated it. And it made the things you don't want to go for. Sound so tiny, but the environment's so horrible in a prison. And you know it even as a kid.
Did you get an idea of what your parents were talking about back then?
I remember, I can't tell you a conversation. What I can do is tell you emotion. Like as a kid, when your mum or dad, it's not my dad really, rarely did, but if your mum or someone cries in your family, don't forget that. Something bad has happened or something. Normally there might be a death in the family as a kid and you don't know everyone's crying. What is everyone crying? You always remember these things. And prison visits, my mum would try not to cry. Yeah. Very funny seeing it because it's putting it on my dad. He don't want to come out on a visit. My mum's like he's got to go back to his cell. My mum was very unselfish, Chris. Mm-hmm. She didn't want him to see that, but she couldn't help it because she's emotional and full of love. And I can see that with my mum, that she misses him being there. And I can see the intensity in the talk. Even as a kid, Mum, Dad. I might want something, crisps or something, and they're blanking me. Because the conversation's so intense, I know that much, that they're so intense. They're not listening to me. I remember that, and I remember my mum crying, and then just stopping, asking for what I wanted, and why's Mum crying? And I'll go and play with that frog with the one eye, the plastic one, all that instead, and you ignore it.
Understand the dynamic of what was going on?
No, you sort of drift away as a kid. You have this memory, you have an imprint of something going on. You don't quite understand it, and you go off doing kid things after that. But it's there. It's still there. I remember kicking up fusses about going on visits. I just refused to go. That sounds bad. I feel terrible saying this. I didn't want to see my dad, but it's that environment. And the atmosphere. You can feel it as a kid. You cut the atmosphere with a knife. when you're that young, you can feel it with your mum. Even when your mum's trying to be strong, and my dad was trying to be strong, you can see it.
Because essentially they're places of misery, aren't they?
Yes, and it doesn't matter what you've done.
Regret and, you know.
It doesn't matter what you've done, what crime you're in for. Every single person in there is miserable. Every single person in there claims that they're innocent. Every single person in there is hard done by. Some of them are fitted up. Some people have that done. But you're not in a good place. And that's why my mum always knew it wasn't a good place to take children, but yet my dad wanted to see his kids. What do? It's catch-22. My mum doesn't want me in that environment, but she doesn't want my dad suffering and staying away from his family. He's already been punished by being put there and he can't live with his family, so she's going to bring him to us. But it's not that easy, especially when you're up in Lincoln and Durham and Dartmoor and these nicks.
So looking at that's the prison visits, but looking at your sort of like primary schooling. So you mentioned that, you know, some people would have been aware of what was going on because of various newspaper articles, say, or just for gossip.
Yeah. I'll go back to the thing about my dad being under the radar. This is the contradiction. There was a lot of people in my area that knew what my dad did for a living, knew what he was. But it's not like the only way is Essex or a face where someone will be known, walk down the street, you'll say a name and everyone will know it. It wasn't like that with my dad. But there were people that knew. And it does affect you, like, for instance, when teachers know. Now, they had to know because I'm being pulled out of school for prison visits. So I get special treatment. Now, and also, I was a bit of a spoiled kid at one point. Got to imagine, my dad's trying to make up for not being there. So he would buy us toys, he'd buy us clothes. I mean, even back then, remember Gabici and all that. I mean, it's all retro now, but that was the nuts back then. I remember my dad coming out and spending a fortune on me. One take me out shopping, clothes. I didn't want the clothes, I wanted toys as a kid. But I remember all this money being spent on me, and all the other kids at school didn't have the brands I had. They couldn't afford it, a lot of them. You know, so a bit jealous as well. And you get teased. And it's a bit different, like your primary school, really, really young, you will get teased over this. Ryan's dad's in prison. When they find out, now does that happen? Okay, I'll give you one example that I remember. When my dad got banged up, the teachers knew about it, but this is because it went in the papers, all the local papers, and it was a little bit on the news. I think this was when John Coles had a video out. I think it was Panorama or something like that. The guy who nicked me dad, you spoke to Coles, and John had a video out, and I think this went like out to everyone in the school. They'd all seen it, you know, everyone had watched it, because it's big news, a local man like that, involved in this was drugs as well, involved in something so serious. It was Speed Factory. And I remember going to school, and my dad, this when he first got nicked, and I can't remember who it was a little kid, I think his name was Renatus, I can't remember, really trying to remember. It was a little group, and it was in my primary school.
And the scruffy kid you were talking about?
No, there was the other one. This is later. There's another school, like the tramp at the school. We always have that. Now that sounds bad to say that, but that's how you see it as a kid. This kid's been spiteful. Everyone's got that. But yeah, I remember going in, and it was because their mums had been talking. Now, if you go in the papers, what happens is that you go home and you'll be sitting there listening. This is the other kids, not me. They'll be sitting there listening, and they'll be like, "Did you hear about Danny O'Halloran? Ryan's dad. You know, our little boy or our little girl's friend who they go to school, the parents are talking about it. It's gossip." Oh, and the kids are listening. Now, most parents, they do like to talk away from the kids, but kids listen. Some of the parents didn't care. They'd let the kids hear what they're saying. So they've come to school listening to their mums and dads. A few of them, not every single one of them. I'm not going to exaggerate or lie. I'm going to tell you the truth. It's a few of them. But the rest jump on the bandwagon. What was that? What was that? As soon as there's something to have a little tease at another kid about, everyone joins in, didn't they? So I've got all that now. Now, I didn't realise it was till later in life that it sort of changes the outlook. So, as a kid, it's quite immature, the way you look at it. Your dad's a criminal. What did your dad do? Is he a tea leaf? What did your dad kill someone? And just the blatant things that kids come out with through lack of understanding and being that age. But then when you get older, Chris, the crime scene, because of films and things like that, in your teenage years, it becomes a little bit cool. People start being a bit enamoured by this way of life when you get older. So now I've gone to being bullied, to people bullying me, but it was bullied over the jealousy of it, like the money thing and all that, you know. So
how long would you say you were spoilt for?
on and off. See, this is different. I'm not. I will be honest. I was not a spoilt kid because I had everything taken away from me as well. Right. It was on and off. Got it. It's not like you've lived your life as Don Corleone's kid for your whole life and you've had it. No, I didn't have a sheltered life like that.
You actually feel that? Hang on a minute, I'm being spoilt now, but hang on a minute, it's all been taken away. I'm being spoilt now, I
didn't understand, Chris. It causes problems. Because 1 minute you can have everything and you're a spoilt kid saying, I want that, I can have that. My mum used to call me I want. I'm going to call you I want because I always want something. I want that, I want that. But then you're given everything because my dad's trying to give me the things that he can't give me, the time that's lost and all that. Emotion, the connection as a father. Right, all them things that he's trying to get back and he's trying to buy it. And I'm taking it as a kid, like a greedy kid. It's like, I'll have that, Dad, I'll have that. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, my dad goes, everything gets taken away and my mum's in bits. And now all of a sudden we've gone from living like Premier League money, like football players' money, and now all of a sudden we're borrowing cars off of people.